Silara had never seen anything like Earth. As the young Zenthari ambassador, she had traveled across countless planets in her lifetime. But none of them were like this small blue world. It was chaotic, alive, and full of strange creatures with even stranger customs. She had read about Earth, studied its people through reports, and heard endless theories about their behaviors, but seeing it all firsthand was something entirely different. Silara was tall and slender, with silvery skin that shimmered under the sun. Her large, reflective eyes scanned the bustling city below as her ship slowly descended through Earth's atmosphere. She was here to observe, to understand the humans, an interesting species with a reputation for being unpredictable. What fascinated her the most was how Earthlings reproduced. The Zenthari had never had a need for physical reproduction. Their species had mastered the art of cloning long ago, making biological reproduction obsolete. They viewed it as an outdated and inefficient practice. But the Earthlings, well, they were still stuck with it. As Silara's ship landed softly in a quiet park on the outskirts of a human city, she felt a sense of excitement mixed with nervousness. She had been briefed about Earth's customs and rules, but she wasn't sure how she would fit in. There was so much to learn, and so much to see. She took a deep breath and exited the ship. The Earth's air was thick and warm, filled with scents she couldn't quite name. Trees towered above her, their leaves rustling in the wind. The sounds of distant voices and the hum of cars created a strange melody. Silara had never encountered a planet so alive. As she walked through the park, she tried to blend in, though her appearance set her apart from the humans around her. After a few moments, Silara noticed a family sitting together on a blanket under a tree. There were two adults, a man and a woman, and a young child who was laughing and playing with a small ball. The scene was peaceful, yet it felt so foreign to her. She approached them cautiously, wondering if they would mind her presence. The family looked up, surprised, but the woman smiled warmly. "Hello, can I help you?" she asked, her voice soft and kind. Silara hesitated. She wasn't sure how to begin explaining why she was there. She had studied Earthlings, but she didn't know much about how to interact with them face to face. I'm from a distant place," Silara said carefully, choosing her words. "I've come to learn about your species, your ways of life." The woman's eyes widened in curiosity. "That's interesting. What do you want to know?" Silara's eyes gleamed with a spark of excitement. This was her chance to learn. "I'm particularly interested in how humans reproduce," she said bluntly, not realizing how awkward the question might sound. The woman's face turned slightly red, but she didn't seem offended. Instead, she seemed intrigued. "Well, that's a big topic. Are you asking about how babies are born, or how people fall in love?" Silara tilted her head. "Both, I suppose. I know that Zenthari don't need to reproduce in the same way. We don't experience things like love the way humans do. But I've heard that Earthlings have these strong feelings, and that reproduction is somehow connected to those feelings." The woman laughed softly, glancing at her partner for support. "Well, that's true. For humans, love is a big part of it. People don't just have children because they want them. They usually do it because they care deeply about each other. And sometimes, the love grows stronger when they bring a child into the world." Silara listened closely, her mind racing. She had read about emotions and how Earthlings could feel attachment, but hearing it firsthand from a human was something else. "So, love is important?" she asked, trying to understand. "Very important," the woman nodded. "Love brings people together. It's the reason we make families. It's not just biology. It's about connection." Silara stood still for a moment, processing what she had just heard. The Zenthari didn't experience love in the same way. Their bonds were formed through shared purpose, shared goals, and logic. But what the woman had described sounded much deeper, something more emotional, more personal. The child, who had been playing nearby, suddenly ran up to Silara, holding out the ball. "Want to play?" he asked eagerly, a wide grin on his face. Silura blinked in surprise. The child's openness and lack of fear were fascinating. Earthlings were so different from her own people. Xanthari children were raised to be focused and disciplined, not playful in the way Earthlings were. Still, she smiled, her curiosity growing. "I would love to," she said, accepting the ball. As they played, Silura began to notice small details. The way the man and woman interacted with each other, their shared glances and gentle gestures. The way they looked at the child with such care and tenderness. These things, she realized, were part of what made humans unique. It wasn't just about reproduction. It was about creating connections, building families, and nurturing bonds. She stayed with the family for hours, asking questions and watching them closely. The more she observed, the more she realized how little she truly understood about Earthlings. They were complex, filled with emotions and desires that her species could never experience. It was both beautiful and overwhelming. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, Silura felt a strange sense of wonder. She had come to Earth to study reproduction, but what she was beginning to understand went beyond biology. Earthlings were not just creatures driven by instinct. They were beings who valued love, connection, and the deep ties between family members. She had only just begun to scratch the surface. This was going to be a journey like no other. The next day, Silura found herself walking through the heart of the city. It was loud, crowded, and full of life. The streets were busy with humans walking quickly, some rushing to work, while others wandered slowly, enjoying the warm sunshine. The air smelled different here, like food and fresh flowers, and the sounds of cars honking and people talking echoed all around her. As she walked, she thought about what she had learned from the family the day before. Love and reproduction were linked in ways she hadn't understood. Back on her home planet, Xanthari didn't feel the need for love. They valued intellect, teamwork, and harmony. But humans seemed to be driven by emotions, and it wasn't just about reproduction. It was much more complex. She was determined to understand this better, so she decided to find a group of humans who could explain it more clearly. Her plan was to approach people who were willing to discuss their culture openly. After a few minutes, she spotted a young couple sitting on a bench near a cafe. They looked relaxed, laughing and talking. Silura walked over slowly, hoping they wouldn't be scared of her. She had learned that Earthlings could sometimes be afraid of the unknown, and she didn't want to make them uncomfortable. Her appearance was certainly not like anything they had ever seen before. When she approached, the couple looked up, a bit surprised, but the woman smiled warmly at her. "Can I help you?" she asked kindly. Silura smiled back, feeling relieved. "Hello, my name is Silura. I come from a distant place. I've been learning about your people, and I wanted to ask you about how humans form relationships." The man raised an eyebrow, clearly curious. "Well, that's a big question," he said, "but we're happy to help. What exactly do you want to know?" "I am interested in how you connect with each other," Silura said carefully, not wanting to sound too forward. "I've heard that for humans, relationships are important, but I don't understand how love and reproduction are linked." The woman chuckled softly. "You're asking a lot of questions. Okay, let's break it down. Relationships are about trust, communication, and shared experiences. People build connections over time, and sometimes they become so close that they decide to have children together." Silura listened closely, trying to follow along. "So, is it always about love? I've learned that humans feel emotions strongly. Does that make the decision to have children easier?" The man nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I'd say so. When two people love each other, they usually want to build a life together. Having children is one of the ways they do that. It's not just about biology. It's about creating a future together, a family." Silura processed this information. The concept of love was strange to her, but she could sense its importance. For the Xanthari, partnerships were formed based on logic and shared goals, not deep emotional connections. The idea that Earthlings connected emotionally before deciding to create life together was both confusing and fascinating. So, Silara asked, when you choose a partner, how do you know it's the right person to have a family with? The woman smiled. Well, it's different for everyone. Some people just know. They trust their hearts and their instincts. Others take a bit longer to figure it out. But the important thing is that it feels right, that both people are ready to share their lives with each other. Silara nodded slowly. I think I understand, but it seems very emotional. For us, it's more about mutual benefit. You know, how a partnership can help everyone grow. The man chuckled. Yeah, we're not exactly like that. But that's the beauty of it, right? We do it because we care, not because we have to. Silara felt a strange sense of awe. Earthlings seemed to view relationships not as a logical step in their lives, but as something deeply personal, built on emotional bonds. Her own race didn't experience such feelings, and the thought of it left her with many questions. Just as she was about to ask more, a young child walked by, holding a toy in one hand. The child stopped in front of the couple and smiled up at them. Can we go play now? The child asked, clearly eager to have fun. The couple exchanged a loving glance before nodding. Of course, sweetie, the woman said, standing up and offering her hand to the child. Silara watched closely, still unsure about many things. The way the woman gently took the child's hand. The way the man smiled down at them. It was so different from anything she had ever seen in Zenthari culture. For them, affection was rare, and the idea of bonding over something as personal as love was difficult to grasp. Thank you for answering my questions, Silara said as the family walked away. You've given me much to think about. The couple waved. Glad we could help. Feel free to ask if you have more questions later. As they disappeared into the crowd, Silara was left standing in the middle of the busy street, her mind racing. She had learned a great deal from the family, but so much remained unclear. She understood that Earthlings had emotional connections, but the depth of those connections was something that still puzzled her. Could it really be that love was the key to everything? Silara walked back to her ship, the weight of what she had learned hanging heavily on her mind. She had come to Earth to study the biological side of reproduction, but now she realized that the emotional side was far more complex than she had ever imagined. This was not going to be an easy task, but she was determined to learn. Her journey had only just begun. Silara couldn't shake the thoughts of what she had learned about human relationships. The more she thought about it, the more complicated it seemed. For the Zenthari, there was no such thing as love in the way humans experienced it. They had no need for emotional bonds or physical reproduction. They believed in logic, structure, and efficiency. Yet Earthlings seemed to thrive on something far more unpredictable: feelings. The next morning, Silara decided to take a different approach to her research. She had been observing families from a distance, but now she wanted to understand more about human biology, the actual process of reproduction. If she was going to grasp the full picture, she would need to learn more than just the emotional side. She entered a local university campus and walked into a large building filled with books, computers, and students rushing from one class to another. The scent of coffee and paper filled the air. Silara was careful to blend in, adjusting her appearance slightly so that she wouldn't stand out too much. Even though she had learned a great deal about Earthlings, she still felt like an outsider. She found a biology classroom where a lecture was just beginning. The professor, a middle-aged woman with short, dark hair, stood at the front of the room, talking about the basics of human biology. Silara slipped into a seat in the back, hoping to learn more about how humans reproduced and the biology behind it. The professor began the lesson by explaining the process of human reproduction. Silara listened carefully, taking notes in her own way, using her advanced technology to record everything. She learned about the different stages of human development, from conception to birth. She learned about the role of the male and female, the fertilization of the egg, and the growth of the baby inside the mother's body. As the lecture continued, Silera began to feel a sense of fascination. The biological side of human reproduction was much more complex than she had anticipated. The humans, unlike the Zenthari, relied on two individuals to bring new life into the world. The process was messy, unpredictable, and full of risks. There was no way to control the outcome. Yet, humans seemed to embrace it, almost as if the unpredictability made it more meaningful. After the class ended, Silera approached the professor. She had learned a lot from the lecture, but she had many more questions. "Excuse me, Professor," Silera said, her voice soft and polite. "I'm very interested in understanding the role that emotions play in reproduction. I know that humans have a biological process, but how do emotions tie into it?" The professor looked surprised but smiled warmly. "Well, that's an interesting question. Emotions are a big part of human reproduction. It's not just about having a baby. It's about the connection people share when they create life together. Most humans have feelings of love and attachment before they decide to have children. These emotions help strengthen the bond between the two people and prepare them for the responsibility of raising a child." Silera thought for a moment, trying to absorb the information. "So, the act of reproduction is influenced by these emotions." The professor nodded. "Exactly. The emotions that humans feel for each other, love, trust, commitment, are what drive the decision to start a family. It's not just biology. It's a choice, a shared goal." Silera felt a sense of awe. The humans didn't just reproduce because it was necessary. They did it because of love and connection. This was something she could never truly understand, but she was beginning to see its importance. Before Silera could ask more questions, a student approached the professor, and the conversation ended. Silera left the classroom and wandered the campus, feeling more confused than ever. She had learned so much about human biology, yet there was still something elusive about the way humans connected emotionally. It was a bond that seemed to go beyond logic, beyond reason. Later that day, Silera decided to observe a different part of human life: childbirth. She had read about it, but witnessing it firsthand would give her a deeper understanding. She found a local hospital and, with permission, was allowed to watch a birth. As she stood in the corner of the room, watching the doctors and nurses work, Silera felt a wave of emotions she hadn't expected. The room was filled with a mixture of tension, excitement, and fear. The woman giving birth, surrounded by loved ones, looked both exhausted and joyful. The moment the baby was born, a feeling of awe and love filled the room. Everyone seemed to share in the joy of new life, and Silera felt it too. It was a raw, beautiful moment. The love and connection between the family members were undeniable. For the first time, Silera understood what the humans meant when they said that reproduction wasn't just about biology. It was about creating a family, a new connection. As the baby was placed in the mother's arms, Silera couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect for the humans. They experienced something her species could never truly feel: the joy of giving life, of sharing love, of creating a future together. It was a bond that was both fragile and powerful, something that couldn't be replicated by logic or technology. Silera left the hospital feeling changed. She had come to Earth with a goal: to understand human reproduction. What she had learned was that reproduction was just one part of a much larger, more beautiful picture. Humans didn't just create life. They created bonds, families, and futures. And that, Silera realized, was something truly special. As the days passed, Silera found herself more and more fascinated by the complexities of human relationships and reproduction. Every conversation she had, every observation she made, added another layer to her understanding. But despite all the new information, there was one question that still troubled her. Why did humans form such deep emotional connections before, during, and after reproduction? She had learned that love and connection were the core of human relationships, but for a species like the Zenthari, who valued logic and efficiency, the emotions that drove humans seemed like a mystery, something that couldn't be explained by biology alone. One evening, While walking through the city streets, Silera came across a park filled with families. She sat on a bench nearby, hoping to observe the interactions between the humans. As she watched, she saw a couple with a young child playing on the swings. The parents were laughing together, pushing the child higher and higher, their faces glowing with joy. The child's laughter filled the air, and for a brief moment, Silera was struck by how beautiful this simple moment seemed. The mother noticed Silera watching them and smiled. "Would you like to join us?" she asked, her voice warm and welcoming. Silera blinked, surprised by the invitation. I don't want to intrude," she said, unsure of how to respond. The father, a tall man with kind eyes, waved her over. "Don't worry about it. We're happy to have company. Come, sit with us." After a moment of hesitation, Silera stood up and walked over to the family. They made space for her on the bench, and she sat down, feeling slightly out of place, but also curious about this new experience. The family continued to play and talk, and Silera observed them closely, trying to understand what made their bond so strong. The mother turned to Silera with a gentle smile. "You seem like you have a lot on your mind. Is everything okay?" Silera paused, unsure of how to explain her feelings. She had been observing humans for days, but she still didn't understand the depth of their emotions. "I have been trying to understand how humans connect with each other. You, for example," Silera said, motioning to the couple. "You seem so close. You play with your child, laugh together. I don't understand how that works." The father looked at her thoughtfully. "It's the little things that matter," he said. "We don't always need big moments to feel connected. It's in the everyday things, sharing a meal, playing with our kids, just being there for each other. We're not perfect, but we try to make it work." Silera nodded slowly, trying to process his words. "So you don't need something special to feel close to each other?" The mother laughed softly. "Exactly. It's the simple moments that make everything meaningful. We support each other because we care. And when you care for someone deeply, everything else falls into place." Silera felt a strange sensation in her chest. It was as if something she had never felt before was starting to make sense. This wasn't just about biology. This was about trust, shared experiences, and most importantly, caring. The Xanthari had no concept of such emotional connections. They believed that logic was the foundation of everything. But here, on Earth, Silera was beginning to understand that emotions were just as important. "I've seen humans act out of love, but I didn't understand why it was so important," Silera confessed. "In my world, logic is everything. But here, you seem to live your lives through your connections to others." The father smiled at her with understanding. "That's right. Love, care, and connection. They give our lives meaning. Without them, what would we have? It's what makes us human." Silera took a deep breath, her mind swirling with new thoughts. She had come to Earth to understand reproduction, but now she realized that it was only a small part of what made humans unique. Their relationships, their emotions, their connections, they were all deeply intertwined with the way they lived and reproduced. It was a way of life that she could never fully experience, but now, for the first time, she could appreciate its beauty. The child, who had been playing nearby, ran up to Silera with a bright smile. "Do you want to push me on the swing?" he asked eagerly. Silera smiled back, a little unsure, but willing to try. "All right, I'll give it a try," she said, standing up and walking over to the swing. The child climbed onto the swing and looked up at her. "Push me really high." Silera carefully took hold of the swing's ropes, giving the child a gentle push. As the child soared higher and higher, giggling with delight, Silera watched the parents. Their smiles were warm, and there was an unspoken understanding between them. They didn't need words to know that they were sharing something precious, something that connected them not just to each other, but to their child as well. For a brief moment, Silera felt something stir inside her. It was as if, through their simple act of playing together, she had caught a glimpse of what it truly meant to be human. It wasn't just about reproduction, or love, or even family. It was about living together, sharing experiences, and finding joy in the small moments. When the child finally slowed down, Celera helped him off the swing and walked back to the bench. "That was fun," the child said, still smiling. The mother nodded. "We're glad you joined us." Celera sat back down, her mind filled with a mixture of awe and confusion. She had learned so much, yet she still had so much to understand. But one thing was clear. Humans were not like any species she had encountered before. They were driven by love, connection, and shared moments, and that was something that could never be explained by logic alone. The days on Earth continued to pass, and Celera's curiosity about human emotions and relationships grew stronger. She had already learned so much, yet she couldn't help but feel like there was still so much more to discover. It was as if the more she observed, the more questions she had. Human connections, particularly the emotional bonds they formed before, during, and after reproduction, were unlike anything she had encountered in her own species. One evening, after spending time at the park with the family, Celera found herself standing on a busy street corner, watching the city around her. People were hurrying home from work, chatting with friends, or enjoying the night air. The lights of the city glittered like stars, and the sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air. It was a world full of life, and yet Celera felt a strange sense of isolation. She had learned a great deal about human relationships and reproduction, but one thing still eluded her. How did humans maintain such strong emotional connections over time? Xanthari didn't rely on emotions to keep relationships strong. They worked together based on logic and shared goals. But humans seemed to thrive on their emotions, and Celera wondered how those emotions could last. She had seen couples and families stay close, but how did they continue to feel that bond, even years later? As she walked down the street, lost in thought, she saw an elderly couple sitting on a bench in front of a small cafe. They were holding hands, smiling at each other, and talking softly. There was an air of contentment around them, as if they had shared a lifetime together. Celera approached cautiously, still unsure of how to interact with humans she didn't know. She had learned so much from the younger families, but there was something different about this couple. They seemed to have a depth of connection that she couldn't yet understand. She had seen love between parents and children, but this was something else. The elderly woman noticed Celera walking by and smiled warmly. "Hello there," she said kindly. "You seem like you're deep in thought. Is everything all right?" Celera stopped, unsure of how to respond. The woman's gentle voice made her feel comfortable, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of warmth. I've been learning about human relationships," Celera said, her voice soft. "But there is still something I don't understand. How do humans keep their connections strong over time? How do you stay close to each other after so many years?" The elderly man chuckled softly, glancing at his wife with affection. "Well, that's a big question," he said, "but it's a good one. We've been together for over 50 years, and I'll tell you this, it's not always easy. Relationships take work. But the love we share, the bond we've built, it's something we've nurtured over time." The woman nodded, her eyes shining with love as she looked at her husband. "It's not just about being in love at the beginning. It's about choosing to love each other every day. We've had our share of tough times, but we've always worked through them together. We support each other through the good times and the bad." Celera was silent for a moment, reflecting on their words. She had never heard such a thing before. In her world, relationships were practical, and bonds were formed to achieve mutual goals. But this was something far deeper. The idea of choosing to love someone every day, even after all the years, was completely foreign to her. "So, it's not just about the emotions you feel?" Celera asked, trying to make sense of it. "It's about making a choice." The elderly man smiled gently. "Yes, exactly. Love is a choice, a commitment. It's not always about the feelings in the moment. Sometimes, it's about remembering why you care for that person, even when things get hard. The woman laughed softly. It's not always perfect, you know. We've had our arguments, our disagreements. But in the end, we remember what brought us together. And we choose to stay close. We choose to keep building our lives together. Thilera felt a stirring in her chest as she absorbed their words. She had come to Earth to study human reproduction, but now she was learning something even more valuable: the strength of human relationships. It wasn't just about biology. It was about the constant effort to nurture and care for each other, even when things were difficult. The elderly couple looked at her with understanding, sensing that Thilera was deep in thought. "You'll figure it out," the woman said softly. "Relationships are a journey, not a destination. The important thing is to keep moving forward together." Thilera nodded slowly. The more she learned, the more she realized that the connections humans formed were not as simple as she had first thought. They were about trust, effort, and making the choice every day to care for one another. It was about more than just reproduction. It was about building a life together, creating a future as a team. As she walked away from the couple, Thilera's mind raced with the new knowledge she had gained. It wasn't just about love or biology. It was about partnership. Humans formed deep emotional bonds not just because of love, but because they actively chose to support and care for one another. For the first time, Thilera began to understand why humans valued relationships so deeply. It was not just a biological necessity, nor a fleeting emotion. It was a lifelong commitment, a promise to be there for each other through every challenge, every joy, and every hardship. She had come to Earth to understand how humans reproduced, but now she was beginning to understand something far more profound: the power of love, choice, and connection. And that, Thilera realized, was the heart of what it meant to be human. Thilera's time on Earth had transformed her understanding of human life. What had begun as a mission to study reproduction had turned into an exploration of something much deeper: the intricate emotional connections that tied humans together. With each day, she grew more fascinated by the way humans nurtured their relationships, how love and care wove through their lives in ways she had never imagined. Yet there was still so much she needed to understand. Thilera found herself thinking about the concept of family, the structure that humans built through their emotional connections. In her own species, the idea of family didn't exist. There was no need for close bonds beyond what was necessary to maintain societal order. But here on Earth, humans built families that were not just about biology, but about love, care, and shared experiences. She decided to visit a local community center one afternoon, hoping to observe families in a more intimate setting. As she entered, she was greeted by the cheerful sounds of children playing, and the warm, inviting smell of freshly baked goods filled the air. There were families of all shapes and sizes, some with small children, others with teenagers, and a few with elderly members sitting together in peaceful conversation. Thilera found a quiet corner where she could observe without interrupting. She watched as a group of parents sat in a circle, talking and laughing. One father was holding a baby, gently rocking the child in his arms, while another mother played a game with her young daughter. Nearby, an older couple shared stories with their grandchildren, their faces full of affection as they exchanged memories. It was then that Thilera noticed a single mother sitting alone at a table with her young son. The boy was coloring, and his mother was quietly watching him, a soft smile on her face. Thilera could sense the bond between them, but there was something different about it, something that intrigued her. Curiosity got the better of her, and Thilera approached the woman, careful not to disturb her. The mother looked up, her eyes warm and welcoming. "Hello," she said, her voice kind. "Are you new here?" Thilera nodded. "Yes, I've been observing human relationships, and I was curious about the bond between a parent and a child. How do you feel about the connection you share with your son?" The woman's smile grew, and she glanced at her son, who was now focused intently on his coloring book. "Well, being a mother is the most important thing in my life. I would do anything to protect him and make sure he grows up happy. We may not have a traditional family structure, but we have each other, and that's enough." Hilara sat down across from the woman, wanting to understand more. "What makes it enough?" she asked. "You don't have a partner, but you still have this strong bond with your son. How does that work?" The mother chuckled softly. "It's simple. Really, we love each other. That's the foundation. It's not about having the perfect family or fitting into a mold. It's about giving everything you have to someone you love. I may not have a partner to share this with, but I'm not alone. I have my son, and together, we're building our own kind of family." Hilara thought about this for a moment. The idea that a mother and child could create their own sense of family, independent of others, was a concept she hadn't fully grasped before. She had seen many families that included both parents, but this was different. This was about the strength of a bond between just two people, built on love and mutual care. The woman continued, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "I think the most important thing a child needs is love and support. No matter what, you show up for them. You help them grow, and you teach them about the world. It's not always easy, but it's worth it." Hilara was moved by her words. She had seen how love could bond parents and children, but now she was beginning to understand that love could also make families in unexpected ways. The mother's relationship with her son wasn't defined by conventional structures. It was defined by the love they shared and the life they were building together. Before she left, Hilara turned to the woman one last time. "Thank you for sharing this with me," she said quietly. The mother smiled again, nodding. "Of course, every family is different, but love is what ties us all together." As Hilara walked away from the community center, her mind was swirling with new thoughts. She had come to Earth to understand reproduction, but now she saw that human relationships were not just about biology. They were about connection, choice, and love. Every family, every bond, was different, but each one was built on the foundation of care and commitment. What struck Hilara most was how humans could form families in so many ways. It wasn't just about the traditional structure of a father and mother raising children. It could be a single mother and her child, a group of friends coming together to raise a family, or even people who chose to create families in their own unique ways. This idea was both beautiful and puzzling to Hilara. In her world, relationships were simple and functional. There were no emotional connections like those she had witnessed on Earth. Yet it was clear to her now that emotions, love, in particular, were at the heart of what made human relationships so meaningful. As she sat on a bench in the park later that evening, Hilara realized that she had gained something far more valuable than just knowledge about reproduction. She had gained a deeper understanding of what it meant to be human, to love, to care, and to choose to build relationships and families. This was the heart of human life. And for the first time since her arrival on Earth, Hilara felt that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to understand. Hilara stood at the edge of the city, looking out over the vast landscape. She had been on Earth for what felt like a long time now, and her understanding of human relationships had evolved in ways she could never have imagined when she first arrived. The initial curiosity about human reproduction had expanded into something much more profound: the complexities of love, connection, and family. Her mission was clear: to study the way humans reproduced, but Hilara realized that her understanding of this process would not be complete without understanding the emotional bonds that tie people together. It wasn't just about biology, or even about love in the most basic sense. It was about the choices humans made every day to nurture their connections, to keep their families strong, and to build their lives around the people they cared about. She thought back to all the people she had met during her time on Earth, from the family at the park, to the elderly couple who had shared their wisdom, to the single mother and her son. Each person had shown her a different side of human relationships, but one thing had been consistent: the importance of connection. Now, as she stood at the edge of the city, she was filled with a sense of peace and understanding. It wasn't just about the way humans reproduced. It was about the way they loved, supported, and cared for each other. This, she realized, was what made their species so unique. She had observed human relationships from every angle: parent and child, husband and wife, even friends who formed families of their own. What amazed her most was the resilience of these connections. Despite the challenges, the ups and downs, humans chose to stay close to one another, to face life together. It was a strength that Silara had never seen in any other species. Her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed a young couple walking toward her. They were holding hands, laughing softly, their faces full of joy. As they drew closer, Silara recognized them. They were the couple she had met at the park a few days ago, the ones with the young child. The mother had invited her to join them, and Silara had learned so much from their interactions. Now, here they were again, and Silara was curious to learn more about their relationship. The couple greeted her warmly, their smiles as genuine as ever. "Hello again," the woman said. "It's good to see you." Silara smiled back. "Hello. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about relationships and how they work. You were right. Love is not just about feelings. It's about choice, commitment, and care. I'm beginning to understand that now." The man nodded thoughtfully. "That's right. Love isn't something that just happens and then stays the same. It's something you have to work at every day. We've had our share of challenges, but we always choose to stay together because we believe in each other." Silara felt a wave of admiration for them. Their relationship was not built on perfect circumstances, but on mutual respect and a shared commitment to each other. She could see that they had created something beautiful together, a bond that was strong enough to withstand the challenges of life. "You both have taught me a lot," Silara said, her voice sincere. "When I first arrived on Earth, I thought relationships were simply about reproduction. But now I see that it's so much more than that. It's about the connections you make, the trust you build, and the way you choose to support each other." The woman smiled softly, her eyes full of warmth. "It's amazing how much love can grow when you choose to nurture it. And it's not always easy. There are tough times, but those times help you grow stronger as a couple." Silara thought about that for a moment. The idea that even challenges could strengthen a relationship was something she hadn't considered before. In her world, problems were solved through logic and strategy. But here on Earth, love and connection provided the strength to face even the hardest times. "You've made me realize that love is not just a simple feeling," Silara continued. "It's a choice, and when you choose to love someone, you choose to invest in them, to be there for them through everything." The man smiled and placed a hand on his partner's shoulder. "That's exactly it. It's about the small things too, the little moments of support, the quiet gestures of care. They add up over time and make the relationship stronger." Silara nodded, absorbing their words. It was clear to her now that human relationships were built not only on love, but also on the decisions people made every day. They worked together to keep their connections alive, to nurture the bonds they had created. As the sun began to set, casting a soft glow over the city, Silara felt a sense of gratitude. She had come to Earth with a mission, to understand how humans reproduced, but now she understood something far more profound. The connections humans shared were not just about biology. They were about love, trust, and the commitment to build a life together, no matter the obstacles. As she walked away from the couple, Silara's thoughts were filled with the lessons she had learned. Human relationships were more than just science. They were an art, a delicate balance of emotions, choices, and shared experiences. The more she understood, the more she admired the strength and beauty of human life. For the first time since her arrival, Silara felt truly connected to the people around her, not just as an observer, but as someone who understood the heart of what it meant to be human. And in that moment, she realized that her journey was far from over. It was only just beginning.